You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
What's up, Tricia? How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fantastic. I've had 3 cups of coffee, Chris.
Oh, no. Oh, boy. Oh, and you're edgy already, so this ought to be a good one.
I am. I'm full of piss and vinegar. Is that like the oldest person? Is that like a really old person expression?
I think so.
Yeah, then forget that. Never mind.
I don't know old people habits because I'm not one of them, and I'm not a boomer, and I don't
Nor
print
am I.
emails.
Yeah, and put them in a 3-ring binder and plastic sheet covers.
Shut up.
That is just ridiculous.
I don't like the earth, okay?
Yeah, just go and take all of them and throw them in the ocean for a fish to eat, okay? That's basically what you're doing.
I like to highlight and make notes and write in the margins, and you just can't do that on your Apple Mac until, without messing it up. So
I would say I have a really difficult time using any type of e-reader. I just want the book. I can't. Yeah. I like the feel of the book. I like being able to go back. I appreciate the e-reader technology with Apple Books and all that, but it's not for me.
See,
it's weird because I'm 29.
I know. As a Gen Z, no, I swear, I love the Kindle. That's the one. I can't read on my iPad, really. I don't like to read on the iPad. Unless it's
the Kindle
browsing.
They made
but
to be more like a book, like the way it appears on the screen and stuff. They actually tried to mimic books, so it's not as harsh. Yeah.
I would say that I do 60% of my reading on that and 40% in actual books, just because I read most nights. So,
when you do research, you're not going through microfilm with the library? Because I kind of picture you like that.
No, I've spent enough on eBay and Amazon books that I have all the books I'll ever need.
Yeah. So what are you reading right now then, Chris?
I'm working on a 4-season podcast with a guy named Matt Whitliff. And it is called Ideological Origins. And we are tracing the origins of American libertarianism and then showing the divergent streams that became progressivism and conservatism. And so I had this idea a few years ago. I think people don't understand I did a lot of researching on the civil rights era, and I noticed that people were making the same exact arguments then in the 60s in politics that we make now about race, immigration, welfare, taxes. It was all the same. And when you sort of trace some of this stuff back, not much has really changed in our political past. And then you go back to the progressive era and the know-nothings and the founding of the country. We're still kind of having the same arguments over and over and over. And so what we're going to do is show the progress of that. And we're using Britain as the template, and that'll be the first season, and talking about the development of liberty and individualism and free markets in England, and then how that spread to the Constitution and democracy abroad. So
is that going to be part of the Chris Spangle show, like the Wall Network?
It's going to be a bonus show on the Patreon for We Are Libertarians, and some of that will spill over to the Chris Spangle Show podcast feed. But the book that I am reading that I started today is by Bernard Bailyn, and it is the inspiration. It's called The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, and it's a seminal study of how the founders came about their ideas. And so that's where the title of the podcast comes from, and that's the book that I'm just starting.
Wait, so hold up, back up. Are you telling me that libertarianism did not start with Murray Rothbard? I'm so confused.
Yeah, no, it's really weird. it's hundreds of years old. Starting,
Yes.
yeah, like if you trace the origins, if you work your way back, you'll find the reason that the libertarians are close to the right is that they were nurtured by people like H.L. Mencken and American Mercury in the 20s and 30s, and then they were nurtured by Buckley, who called himself a libertarian in National Review in the 50s and 60s. He had Murray Rothbard,
which is funny because he's definitely a conservative, although I would say he's more in the tradition of conservatism and not like somebody would today call themselves a conservative.
Yeah, so the point of being a conservative is to conserve free markets, the individualism, the natural rights tradition, the Charter of Negative Liberties in the Constitution. It is not arguing that we should feed your kids racist cartoons and women should stay in the kitchen. That is not conservatism. And so that's where
Nor is it an offensive war machine. Nor is that's not conservatism at all.
Conservatism is not owning the libs. It is supposed to be very close to libertarianism, but a little more communally focused and a little less progressive, which is why libertarians are often a little more seemingly leftist on issues like the drug war, foreign policy and all that good stuff. So yeah.
I would describe traditional conservatism as like minarchism plus some extras, basically.
Right.
Yeah, it's minarchism as defined by the Constitution originally.
Yeah.
Thought out. Yeah. I know we lost listeners because of this speak.
No, I don't think so. Okay. Not at all. We're just getting started here.
All right, because we're going to get down into the nitty-gritty of anarchism and what the hell is going on with the liberty movement and cancel culture and whatnot. Yeah,
so you are on a roll. And listen, as long as I've known you, which is like 2 or 3 years, you are not a flaming liberal, like a progressive, woke libertarian. Like, you're not out there marching for Bernie Sanders in disguise. Like, you were a member of the Mises people, and you've sort of floated away from that over the last year. And I have to think a lot of it has to do with your DMs, because as long as I've known you, your DMs have just been obscene and gross, and men are the worst.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do just even with that, but then also like, becoming a principled anarchist and watching everybody who claims to be an anarcho-capitalist, which I am, moving away from that and becoming this sort of nationalist alt-right version of what they consider anarchism, which isn't even a thing. That's a bastardized version of it. And I just don't understand it, because I just keep trying to be principled and living by, the principles of anarchy and free markets. And they just keep moving closer and closer to the state and violent coercion. And I don't understand it. Like, I'm over here, guys. I keep going down the path that you started me on, but it seems like that's too hard a path for you, and you just want to run back to your statism. And I'm never going to do that. Like, I don't need to do that, and it makes me very sad to see a lot of people I know like go back down that path.
Yeah, it's like liberalism is not like progressivism. Liberalism is the idea of an open and free society, welcoming to all. People can achieve self-actualization through that open society with free speech, with multiculturalism, with free markets. And really what it comes down to is that it seems like a lot of libertarians have become illiberal and anti-democratic. And a liberal democracy like ours, which is basically and I know you don't agree with this, but it's better than the alternatives, which is you set up a system where you vote in the people that have access to that coerced power, and in exchange, they agree to limit themselves to, a constitution or a set of agreed upon rules. And we all know that Republicans and Democrats have not been doing a great job at that, but there's at least some semblance of trying. And Trump just kind of said, I'm not even going to pretend to play the game. I'm going to make your game worse. And that like antagonism is really attractive to a lot of libertarians.
Yeah, which is strange to me because I don't believe they're libertarians. So once you have a man in power that still uses all the force of the state and does everything you didn't like before, but he says the words you like, if you fall for his rhetoric, then you're a fool and you're a tool of the state. You're not an anarchist. You're not even a libertarian. You're going back to what's comfortable for you. And disliking a group of people is not an identity. It's just being a shit ass. Like, I don't like a group of people. I don't like said liberals. I don't like said right wingers. You know what? That's not a philosophy. Maybe fine tune your philosophy and then you can make an argument, because not liking a group of people, it's all that is just letting them have you where they want you. The state has you where they want you, and they're playing with you, and you're allowing yourself to be played with. It's very foolish. And to me, it's above my pay. It's above my class, I should say. I'm an anarchist.
Lenin called them useful idiots. So basically they parrot the party line that makes it, they're unwitting tools of the party that will produce less freedom, but it's dressed up in language of freedom. You know, but cruelty is the point. Like, I think that's the thing that we have a hard time reconciling, is that I look back at like my grandparents, and they loved Bobby Knight, and they loved AJ Foyt, right? And they loved loud, brash people that fought. Like, they loved that. They didn't mind that Bobby Knight choked his players. Like, you know, they didn't care that he was a little racist. That's what made him fun. It was the spice, right? You know, and they loved. They're not paying attention to politics now, but you know, my grandmother would have loved Donald Trump and would have thought that the sun shined out of his ass. Like, you know, it's because she, as much as I don't want to admit it, she loved the cruelty. She loved feeling superior.
Well,
you know, and it's a terrible thing to say. Right.
Mm-hmm. But when you become a libertarian or an anarchist or any form of somebody that kind of bucks the system and questions, you have to realize that you're probably not going to win a lot of things other than the security in your own beliefs. Because most people don't think like you. So I guess you just kind of, a lot of people just fall back to this collectivism where I'm going to side with the right or left. And it's like, but are you standing in principle? Did you even believe what you said you believed originally? Or was it just comfortable at the time, depending on who is in power? And that to me is very sad. Like, if a leftist is in power and you say you're a libertarian, but then all of a sudden a right winger gets in power and now you like him, it doesn't make you a libertarian. It makes you a right wing collectivist, and vice versa. Like, you could say the same thing about Joe Biden. It's like, did you really dislike the state, or did you just like the state, the different flavor of the state? You know, like, pick your battles, choose your side, which should be the side of liberty, and then stand in your principles.
Yeah, like, I think a lot of people buy into the fear of either side. Like, they're secretly rooting for their side to beat up the other side because they think the other side's so terrible. And the fear mongering is just, it's worse on the right. It's right now, it's worse on the right. It just is, because Trump has built an entire machine around grievance, and people are just falling for this fear of the other side that they're willing to abandon their principles to allow, you know, I'm not going to say I agree with it, but I'm just sort of happy that they're doing that.
Well, I would say, like, fear mongering is a tool of the state. So it happens on both sides. We know this. It's just more prevalent among conservatives now. I think that and I would, conservatives with, you know, quotations around it.
Not the real conservatives, the own the libs conservatives.
I can't even think of a real conservative in modern times right now, actually. I can't think of one. Can you?
I would say, the Dispatch guys and Jonah Goldberg. I think, like, Jonah Goldberg is Yuval Levin, AEI. AEI is a pretty decent conservative think tank, you know, where listen, they're not anarchists. They're okay with certain functions of the state, they're somewhat militaristic, but they're not overly so, and they're I would say those guys, like, they're all about Jonah Goldberg's book, Suicide of the West, is a really good book, and it's very close to libertarianism in a lot of ways, and libertarian philosophy. So it's really good.
It sounds very conservative from the title.
Yeah, Suicide of the West. And it's basically about fighting tribalism and nationalism and socialism and, standing on the principles of the individual liberty and free markets. And, so let me ask you this. What is grinding your gears that has you so worked up over this? Like, what has happened in the last week that's just got you up in arms and full redhead?
So I've gone full ginger because I am an egalitarian as far as my philosophical beliefs, and that
what
lines
does that
up
mean?
with. So I believe men and women have equal value.
What?
And yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's a crazy idea. You would think it was crazy by me saying that.
Next caller.
Yeah. But I have seen, which I hate using this word, probably because I've been conditioned to hate using it. I have seen so much misogyny that it's disgusting. I think the right thinks misogyny makes them woke, and it just makes them sound stupid, to be honest.
It's a virtue signaling. Like, there's one guy that I saw you commented on his post today. I've been friends with this guy. He's a libertarian locally. Been friends with him 15 years. And I've just seen him go over the last 5 years full alt-right, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's like...
I've seen that with a lot of my friends. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw he basically commented something along the lines of, most women will spend thousands of dollars on makeup and beauty tips when all they really need to do is eat less food.
Yep.
And now this is a fit guy, because I looked on his profile picture, because if he was fat, I was going to meme him. And then I decided to look at his wife, and I thought, I'm not going to make fun of her because she obviously needs help. And I almost commented, hey, at this guy's wife, if you need help getting out of this marriage, please contact me. Because there's no way that guy is a decent husband. And I just unfriended him. And I saw you commented, and it was just like, what is the point of that status? Well, it's just to show your other bros that you're a piece of shit, like they are.
Well, and he gets a lot of, hey, congratulations, you're great, and this and that. And it's just like, I went back through other posts and realized that every value he gives to women is whether he can have sex with them or not. So it was, you can't be friends with women if they're your family or coworkers. Otherwise, don't be friends with them. And I thought, oh, okay. So you can't have incest because that's gross. And then your boss frowns upon interworking relationships, so you'll have to put up with them. Otherwise, you can't have sex with them, so they have no value. And it was just like, how little do you think of women that you have to categorize them in whether you can be attracted to them and have sex with them? That's pretty gross. And I've just seen a huge thread of that. And, I make sexist jokes and stuff about stereotypes because, part of them are funny. And if I don't feel like they're going to hurt anybody, I'm going to make them. But it's almost a defense mechanism because it's like, hey, guys, I'm not some uber third wave feminist. I understand men's rights. I fought for men's rights. I think working for bill reform is fighting for men's rights because they're the ones most affected by it. But it's like, why do you feel the need to be so scared of a few third wave feminists that you need to just trash women? It's just gross.
What that does is like, this is a guy who has read every it's like the right-leaning press. Go look at the topics of podcasts this week on all the top Republican podcasts, and it's all about Meghan Markle. They're all talking about how Meghan Markle is a non-story, doesn't matter. And oh my God, let's spend 5 days on her. Right. Because they're obsessed with the fact that she's a black woman who is speaking her mind. Like, there's really, I don't think it's much more complicated than that.
It's also, and I made some stupid jokes about it, but honestly, she's suicidal. That rich people kill themselves more than poor people. statistically.
Yeah, I mean,
if you actually look at the numbers.
I haven't followed the story, but it is funny how this type of guy obsesses on stories like that and betrays kind of like the thing that he thinks he isn't, if that makes sense. Like,
no,
he's obsessing over uppity women, and then will tell everybody he's not a misogynist when he's called a misogynist. And it's like, at what point do you have 15 women on a thread going, this is really gross and ugly? And by the way, if there's 15 women calling you out, there's 1,500 that didn't speak up.
Right.
And it's sort of like when people try so hard to defend like a Me Too rapist, like a Roy Moore, and you don't realize like all the women in your feed are just going, oh, okay, I'm not going to be alone in a car with that guy. You know, it's like the need to defend the dregs of society by being one of them is a weird impulse for guys like this.
Well, and it becomes an impulse for women that are libertarians too, because you don't want to be put in this category of this liberal third wave feminist that doesn't understand, politics, culture, and
how hard it is to
markets.
be a man.
Yeah, and so I'm not that type of girl, and they become these, and I hate using this term in a way, but I kind of like it because they become pick-me's. They become, hey man, look at me, I'm like you. So a pick-me is a woman that raises her hand and wants desperately to be approved by a man and will literally reject any type of standing up for herself or any type of real feminism and just always like crucify herself for a man. It's a pick-me. And I see a lot of this because they don't want to, it's difficult to stand up for yourself and say, hey, I think that's a misogynistic comment, or I don't think you're treating women fairly, and I think we should be on equal footing. And once you say that, it's like, oh, you're just like them. You don't have any say. And I realize there's a lot of women that understand free markets that aren't pick-me's. They're feminists, just not Marxists. And that's okay too. Like, we're allowed to stand up for ourselves, just like men are allowed to stand up for themselves.
Yeah, like 15 years ago, so 10 years ago, we would, if we had a female co-host go to the Libertarian Party convention, we literally had to follow them around because there were just so many creeps around, and there were so few women. And so it was just very like the creeps were very aggressive. And what's happened over the last 5 years, I think, as the right has become more cretinous, and so many libertarian guys have become so cretinous and like, adopting that, what Jeffrey Tucker called brutalist mindset, that there's been like this been a big influx of women. Like there is probably quintuple the amount of women that there were 10 years ago.
Ohio LP is like hugely infiltrated by women. We run a lot of things here. It's amazing. They're great people.
It's a gynocracy, to be honest. But the reality is women and people of color are just not putting up with this shit anymore. Like,
right.
And that's the thing that I think bothers some of these uglier guys. And I think that when you have this conversation, you've got your regular average guy who feels attacked by this conversation. And I just say, like, why do you feel attacked? Because if we're not talking about you, we're not talking about you.
Right.
But, and that's the thing that I think that those guys, like the middle goes, oh, I'm with this other side and I can't hear this kind of thing. It's like, no, like, why do you feel attacked? We're not talking about you if we're not talking about you. But, like, my point is that there's this great groundswell of support for women who are speaking up and saying, like, this is not a good environment. This is not how people ought to be treated. This is, like, that's what you want to see, because that's what makes the backbone. There's a libertarian named Kathy Reinswans. I know I've gotten her name wrong. I'm so sorry. But like, she was the first feminist libertarian that I ever saw, like online, and still is online, and was a progressive libertarian, and just took a beating and has taken a beating for 10, 15 years online, like doxxed and harassed and mistreated and talked down to and treated like just, an inferior person, and she's never gone away. And I've always appreciated that she didn't, because so many progressive or left-leaning libertarians or people who are trying to just say this is not right back down and disappear and give up the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's why I think a lot of people don't want to speak up in circles like this, because they don't want to take the abuse. And the other side goes, well, there's no abuse because I don't participate in that. I would never do that. It's like, you have no idea. Tricia, you're getting crapped on for just saying the obvious, which is, like, we should treat people nicely, and women are people.
Yeah, and, you know, speaking to what you were saying, there was a long time where I didn't speak up, just merely because I didn't want my friendships or my relationships online or through the LP or whatever to be strained. So I just shut my mouth. And it's come to a point where I just don't care to do that anymore, because I don't think that serves any good purpose. If you're going to trash me as a woman, trash my appearance or trash fellow women's appearance and say that that's our value, then if I stand with you, I'm a piece of garbage, and I'm not garbage. I believe in my philosophy, and I can tell you all day about anarcho-capitalism, but what I can't tell you about is preserving Western culture, because that has nothing to do with that shit. And so if that's your whole thing, like, we're going to have issues, dude, and I'm going to stand up for myself. And if you call me a feminist, well, goddamn right. I believe men
that's the thing
and
about
women are equal. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Right, like so preserving Western civilization,
So
like,
stupid.
What does that, like, I'm reading a ton about St. Augustine, Florida, my favorite city on earth, and, like, it's the first colonized settlement by the Spanish in 1565. Like, they got off the boat killing Indians and stealing things for, like, it's built on slave labor. Like,
yeah, it wasn't a great culture.
The women until the early 1900s, basically, if they didn't have a man in their life, had to prostitute themselves, because that was the only way that they could feed their kids, because of, you know, morality laws from the Spanish and the American governments. Like, this is not a culture that we ought to support, right? Like, there's good parts of it, like the natural rights tradition and individualism and free markets. The harder you fight for the uglier parts, the harder it is to fight for the good parts.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to get that you can take something from this and leave the other stuff, and you're not going to give over and start tearing down Washington statues.
That is the biggest problem with libertarians, is the fact that most of them that I've come in contact with that I feel like are regressing cannot understand that two things can be true at the same time. It's just such a ridiculous thing for them to fathom, that, you know, you can take the good and the bad from something. Like, something can be good and bad at the same time. Like, it's just all, we're going to throw it into this binary choice. And what that is basically like bowing again to the duopoly, and everything you said you didn't believe in, you're just falling right back into.
Yeah. So as you started to speak up, like, what has been that experience like as you started to kind of push out of that comfort zone?
So I've lost a lot of like hardcore right-winger friends. I can't imagine what they're saying about me in circles. And I this has happened to me before. It's not a big deal, because I generally just, like, I rise back up, because I'm a phoenix. Or at least I like to think I am.
You're a strong ginger that don't need no party, okay?
Yeah, that's right. But I did notice as of late, I had been called, like, blue pilled and things like that, which is the dumbest thing ever. Just please stop. Like, it's like using vernacular from, like, a time long ago, I feel.
No, it's tagging. It's the same high school bullshit that everybody went through. It's a way, and I've got other people that, like, have blocked me, that used to do this, that would go and signal to their crowd and like point out negative shit about me and say to their crowd, this is not a person you should trust or listen to.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. They all follow the rules of this crowd, and it's like, I'm an anarchist. Like, not that I don't listen to people that I find intelligent, but I don't follow a crowd. That's kind of like against the individual. I'm not a collectivist. Like, I don't need to agree with you on everything.
It's like dudes that have podcasts named after free thinking are like, I would rather read Lenin than listen to a blue-pilled libertarian. It's like, okay. It's all social signaling, and it's very mature to like signal that this is not a part of our group and you need to not listen to them. And in fact, you need to open them up for harassment because we don't want their poison infecting your brain.
I also find that they just use code words and they really can't logically explain their arguments. So when you get to a point, they just say, okay, libtard, or you're blue-pilled, or you're thanks for your woke, or whatever. It's like, no, I'm an anarchist. I'm engaging in a conversation with you, which you refuse to have with me, which shows me that you really can't back up your argument, and you're just small. And I don't have a lot of time left in my day for that anymore. Like, I'm not going to put up with that shit anymore. At 29 years old, I have little left in me.
I know that, like, this fundamental culture change that has happened over the last couple of years, because you asked today, like, when did libertarians start becoming nationalists?
Yes.
And it's really, like, been a 5-year slide, but especially the last 2 years, it's just really accelerated as... I mean, a lot of these people are afraid of the culture war stuff. They buy into the fear that's pushed by a Tim Pool or a Ben Shapiro, and their worldview becomes much, much smaller and much scarier, and they can't risk it talking to other people, listening to other people. I mean, so like, I guess
I think that's very unfortunate.
Have you started to doubt? Because I haven't doubted any of our fundamental principles. It's made me doubt if a full anarchic society could exist if the people that are supposed to be the most committed to an open society are this susceptible to propaganda. And so it makes me wonder if it's possible, from a moral and utilitarian standpoint, this is the most moral society as an anarchist society. It's the most functional utilitarian society, but it's the trust factor is broken down for me. I mean, have you felt that on your end?
I kind of come at it from a different angle. I suppose I have a really simple answer for that. Maybe it's too simple. I don't know. But those people aren't anarchists. They're just statists in disguise trying to be cool. And they don't understand liberty. And if you don't understand liberty, you're going to swing back to that. So all we need to do is just get more people to understand liberty. So I don't fear that or fear them because they're not really living their principles. If you have no fruits from your principles, you don't really believe it. You could say everything all day. My God, my dad says he's a libertarian. And then he argued for like the government planning sewers with me. I'm like, really, Dad? Like the shitters? Like that's the thing you're really... So a lot of people can say whatever they say, but if they don't live their principles, then, they're just the same as everybody else.
Right.
So, true liberty lies with the person that lives it, not with the person that says something and then changes their mind later on. So I'm not too much worried about them. Like a lot of people can claim a lot of things, but, I'll know them by their fruits.
Yeah. Do you want to do any questions here?
I always want to do questions on stereo. Hell yeah. Who knows
All
what
right.
the hell's just about to happen.
All right, John, man.
Oh my God, that was my husband. And
was it?
He must have accidentally hit something.
It's probably his giant penis accidentally hit the button.
Yes.
Tricia one day sent us all a picture of him in gray sweatpants. I swear to God, it has its own zip code. Pray for Tricia's service.
So he's gonna hate me so much right now, but he had a vasectomy like less than a week ago. That was actually about a week ago.
Oh, so that's why you're more interested in feminism is because you're gonna turn him. You made him a woman.
He is in pain. Oh God, John, don't hate me. Don't divorce me. But he's just had like we both had like a rough surgical week. But
all
know,
three
the
of
poor
you,
guy,
all three of you, John, and his penis.
yes, we've had a hard week. Oh, we can make so many jokes about that. I won't do that. John, did you accidentally hit something? I'm dying laughing. I'm still going to make fun of him for that later. Anyway, do we have any other questions?
The discovery of liberty is almost equivalent to being born again. It requires one to open one's mind to a receptivity to reality that was otherwise disenfranchised from one's experience of life in a former state of mind. To be truly liberated is to be engulfed in this great endeavor towards enlightenment. And so to be liberated requires that one gives up their ignorance. So it stretches far beyond any philosophy that was expounded in the 20th century and goes millennia into history when human beings were seeking out some form of elevated consciousness. So it's beyond religious. It's pseudo. I don't want to say pseudo-religious or quasi-religious, but the idea of actually generating a liberal.
Now listen here, sir.
That was my husband.
He's using a lot of big words, and I'm going to take it as an insult.
No,
but I'm going to let it go.
He was really thinking about what we were talking about.
He's using a lot of big words.
He uses those words daily. Like, that's my life. Like, I'll be like, hey, honey, do you want breakfast? He's like, could you shape it in a dodecahedron? I'm like, what?
Oh, my God.
But yeah, well,
when you have you have an extra 18 inches to store all your knowledge. Because, that's where we do all of our thinking.
Yes. Well, yes, I would say that. Although, I'm trying to be like a good feminist and not objectify men the same way they objectify women. But yeah, I'm going to fail at that.
Well, we'll make it equal and talk about boobs later. Okay,
great. To John's point, I would say that the philosophy of liberty is not just a political philosophy or something new, that it is age old, and it requires letting go of a lot of perceptions and presuppositions, because most people live in statism. Like, most of us have been raised in it, so it is difficult to overcome that and gain that philosophy and live it.
Can you explain statism for people who may not be familiar with that?
Oh yes, I forget. So statism is simply somebody that believes in the validity of the state. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody that lives under one, because then we're all statists. So the state is any form of government that is violently coercive. Anything that is backed up by a gun in a cage is government. So,
all right, let's take the next.
Yeah, but didn't the liberals just cancel Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez?
No,
I don't even know what even happened with that. I can't even keep up with all this cancellation.
I know, there's one every week. Listen, I was 8 years old watching Pepe Le Pew and knew that guy was a rapist. Like, come on. Like,
Stop.
Who the fuck didn't know that Pepe Le Pew was a problem? Like, as they were drawing it, they were like, hey, this is the time, like the time I was in college in 1947. Like, I mean, it's, I mean, the central to Pepe Le Pew's only character attribute was the fact that he would sexually harass a cat. Like, yeah. What other redeeming quality does he have? Like, there's range to Donald Duck or Daffy Duck and the rabbit or whatever like.
How did the cancellation happen? Like, was it Looney Tunes, or like who decided to pull him?
Yeah, they're making Space Jam 2, and they decided not to put Pepe Le Pew in it.
Why?
Because they're like, what are we going to do? We can't have him sexually harassing the rabbit, so there's nothing for him to do. So let's just not put him in it. And the conservatives have taken up this cause. Like, and it's the same thing.
Basically not in Space Jam 2? That's it?
Yes, and this is a sign that they're taking your culture from you. So, like... This is just kind of where I don't care if Harry and Meghan Markle leave the monarchy, and I don't care if the monarchy gets destroyed, and I don't care if Dr. Seuss's foundation decides that they don't want to publish 6 of their own books anymore, and I don't care if Looney Tunes doesn't want to put one of their shitty characters in a movie. Like, and like conservatives really have nothing left in the tank. They have nothing. The base has nothing left to offer America because today Joe Biden signed $2 trillion worth of federal funds in government stimulus, and the only thing Republicans can talk about is Pepe Le Pew because they have no credibility left. They like Donald Trump was mad that Nancy Pelosi's stimulus this time last year was not big enough, so there's no credibility left. So in some ways I'm okay with them talking about Pepe Le Pew because at least they're not insulting us by talking about the deficit. Like, that would be more insulting than talking about a cartoon.
Yeah, I think it's gone beyond. I watched Mitch McConnell today. I think it was ABC News. There was a clip. He's like, this is possibly the worst bill that's ever passed. I'm like, dude, you've fucking been there for 40 years? Maybe shut your mouth, and it's probably your fault that it passed.
Yeah, how about we talk about fucking...
Don't get all righteous.
Jim Crow laws, that or slavery. Maybe some of that was worse. The Fugitive Slave Act seems to me to be a little worse than the $2 trillion stimulus, but okay.
Here's the thing about the stimulus. It's just going to make our future generations more poor, maybe, because there's a lot of different theories on the way that the money U.S. spends into deficit. What I would say is, if you get that money, put it towards something that'll last, and then do good by your kids. That's the best you can do. Like maybe invest in a little bit of silver.
Our Patreon.
Or yes, of course, the Wall Patreon. That will see your children through generations.
Yes, I will become their daddy. All right, next one.
Hey, what's up? Chris and Ginger. I am Real Talk All Day, member of the UPC podcasting group. I have a segment on here called Ask a Cop. Basically, I've been a police officer for 3 years, working in a major city. People come on, talk about a variety of things. I can talk about a variety of politics. But sometimes people come on, they ask questions about policing, or they bring big topics like BLM, riots, stuff like that. Break down shootings, court cases, constitutional rights, stuff like that. So I'm inviting you guys, if you guys are interested, feel free to go to my face and click on my Instagram, send me a message. I'd love to have you guys on. Let's make a plan. I'm planning for April, by the way.
He's advertising on your show because you have a lot of followers, but cool.
That's okay. I'll come on your show as long as there's donuts.
I don't think he knows how I feel about cops, but I'm actually always willing to have an open conversation. So I appreciate that.
I'm 100% going to follow him for sure. I'd love to hear that.
Definitely. I think I already do.
I think that's been the biggest thing over the last year that I've kind of, when you do podcasting, you're supposed to be like Rush Limbaugh. You're very sure of your opinions. You're always right. No one else who disagrees with you is right. And in the wake of the George Floyd stuff, I was always very anti-cop, and now I'm kind of like, these guys are just enforcing all of the laws that we have asked them to enforce. The problem is that we pass too many laws, and a lot of these guys are trying to do their best, but some of them are also racist. Some of them are violent, it's like every other profession. There's some really shitty ones. And I just think it's a much more complicated situation than I think I ever gave credence to.
I honestly think there's a weird fraternity there that is just violent and wrong and needs to be stopped. Yeah. The police union needs to be stopped. So you and I probably have a little different opinion of that. And I have personally known police officers in a white suburban town, and they're racist as hell. I'm just telling you all.
I'm saying we agree. I'm just sort of willing to listen more than I used to be.
Yeah, well, I've actually learned a lot from, so I've listened to a lot of shows and podcasts and done a little bit of investigation on police that leave the system and then probably try to do better. And I think it was a Chicago, I think he was the police commissioner, left it and kind of went into teaching people about nonviolent crimes and why they shouldn't be prosecuted. And so, there's definitely decent cops. The problem is that, they either get suicided or let go or, deplatformed. So
Right.
it's unfortunate. And no, I think they definitely have something good to say. And they've been in the system. They know it better than all of us.
All right, next up.
Didn't the progressives just cancel a bunch of things?
Yeah,
Also, because some people care if they come on my show, so I've started putting this disclaimer. I'm a libertarian.
nice.
One of those annoying people.
Oh.
So, some people care. You might not.
Real talk all day then.
Hey,
we'll
real
get
talk
to
all day. I'm a libertarian anarchist baby, so we can chit chat.
All right. Now he's cool. He's not. He's a cool cop.
Yeah.
To support egalitarianism would be similar to saying that every ego has an equal opportunity to express its worth in the marketplace of ideas. And I think that would be obviously, regardless of one's race or sex or creed, it is to actually express one's voice in a way that is open to judgment and possible condemnation. And that is what allows somewhat controversial voices to rise to the surface, is when they have the bravery to be exposed in the present in a way that might call silence to fall upon them or to be requested of them. But true egalitarianism would require that all egos get to be heard.
Tricia, what the fuck did he just say?
That's my husband. He speaks in philosophy.
You know he
So
has
he's-
a big dick because he's playing Coldplay. And a real man doesn't listen
that
to
wasn't
Coldplay.
That was Baby Einstein for my infant.
Ah, that sounded like stars will fall.
Oh, okay. He's speaking in philosophy. So it's basically like the reason that the most edgy voices get heard is because when you speak your ego into existence, like only the ones that hit the fray get listened to.
Right,
Basically.
right. People
Yes.
love a show.
So, yeah, there's a reason that the people that live on the edge and speak the most cruel or in whatever way are the ones that are most heard. So the kind people generally don't make big waves. Unlike you, Christopher.
Well, thank you. It's funny, the harder I've tried to be respectful and nice, the more offensive I become. It's it's really weird.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. Yeah. And I've learned that, the more that I try to understand different voices than mine, the more I get called horrible names. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm supposed to be mean because I don't really feel like bullying people. That's not my jam,
Mm-hmm.
Do we have more questions?
Sorry, could you guys double back on the status that you guys are talking about? Hey, what's up, Chris Spangle?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's that?
Hey, what's up, Chris and Ginger? Could you guys just double back on the status you guys are talking about? I just joined and I'm a bit late. Cheers.
So,
Cheers.
yeah, we basically are talking about politics and empathy and really about how, sometimes when you speak up, there's going to be consequences for that. I mean, is that a fair assessment of this conversation?
I would definitely say so. But speaking your truth is a good thing. I think we could both agree on that. It might not do you well in this lifetime, but hopefully it pays off in the next.
No, I think once you when you start doing a podcast or any kind of brand, you want everybody to like it and you want everybody to like you. And I'm a person that wants to be liked. Once a lot of people, you get to a point where you're big enough that a lot of people tell you how much they don't like you, you really stop caring because I find it annoying, but I don't really care. And it doesn't really change my editorial stance. I'm not, people go, well, you're a woke libertarian because you're getting some sort of gain out of it. Or the word clout was used on Instagram. I've never had less clout in my life within within libertarian circles. I've never had more criticism shot my way. There's not a big avenue for Christian conservative white male libertarians that aren't racist or aren't pushing racist tropes. Like there's like me and like I think that's it. You know what I mean?
Wait,
so it's just,
there's like Vaughn.
Right, Vaughn, right?
They used to have a huge online presence, so yeah.
Right, like there's not. It's not like if you go full one way or you go full the other way, then you can really maybe make some money and like buy a nice house in Malibu, like Jimmy Dore. But like, I'm not. That's not happening with me. It's so
Well,
I'm saying what I think, and if people don't like what I think, they don't have to listen, and I don't really give a shit. Otherwise, I just want you to stop being annoying to me.
well, that comes back to collectivism. It's really scary to leave your tribe, even if you've become a libertarian and you think you are a free thinker or whatever. But all these people say these things, and boy, you step out of line and you're going to get your hand smacked. So it's very easy for anybody else that's brave enough to step out of line and not completely agree with everything a certain group or subsect says.
Right.
And now it's like, are you friends with them still? Oh, I better tell them that I don't like them so the good boys can see that I don't like them and I'm not one of him. And it's really, it's just like obeying the police when somebody goes against them. It's like the one brave person that says, I don't answer questions, fuck you. And everybody else says, he did it, and points at him because they're scared to shit for the one guy that stands up for himself. You know what? I don't care about those people anymore.
Yeah,
if you're scared to be my friend because I don't agree with everything a certain group says, you're not my friend. And the people that are my friends don't particularly care and don't spend too much of their time on that.
I mean, my problem is that she doesn't look black, and she's
all right. I don't know why you would say that about Tricia. But...
Yeah, I'm not an African American. I am a white Caucasian.
No, he's talking about Meghan Markle.
Okay. Oh no, I think I'm like, thank you.
I was joking.
Because I mean, I do have a nice ass. No, I'm just kidding. I think Meghan Markle's like Hispanic. I think, isn't she?
I don't honestly want to speculate.
Anyway, she's a person of color, so she's obviously not like completely.
Bring me my mint julep and let's speculate on her race.
God, are you what's his face? What's Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, right.
Django right now.
I'm not getting
we're the whitest people in the world.
Not interested
Chris,
in that conversation.
We just lost all of your black followers. They're like, I'm
just
really sure what's
canceled.
wrong with these people.
It's okay.
Suicidality happens to be a symptom of affluence. Why do you believe that people who have more comfortable lifestyles have a tendency towards suicidality as opposed to those who grow up in more impoverished circumstances?
Oh, actually, that's really interesting. No. So I've seen a lot of negative thoughts about Meghan Markle. I think he's referring to that. And she was suicidal and people made fun of her because she was rich, which ironically, rich people kill themselves at a much higher level. And I really didn't appreciate people making fun of her for feeling suicidal. I don't particularly think her status as a celebrity or a rich person.
Those people
are assholes.
Those people don't understand. I've dealt with suicidal ideation my entire life until the last couple years. And the reason things have changed in the last few years is connection. Suicide has everything to do with either brain chemistry or your value and standing within a community and being understood by people and your own self-worth. And somebody that is wildly isolated, constantly the subject of a torrent of speculation and gossip and hate, and just I've spent my entire career working around people of high social status, celebrities or radio or media figures or politicians or race car drivers. I've spent a lot of my career working with and for them and watching them, and it's not easy. It's not easy to be in a position of in a large public position. I'm not saying that it isn't. It's certainly a lot easier than being a poor single mom, who is struggling,
right.
Or any single mom really. But it's not easy to feel completely isolated and nobody else in the world knows what you're going through. And it's why you see the former presidents all get along, because they're the only ones who know how that feels. And
yeah, no amount of money can change the feeling of not being able to talk to your friends.
Yeah,
or having
and
to listen to you. It doesn't matter how rich you are.
look at like Melania's Trump best friend turning on her and selling her stories and gossip for a book, and it's like that would have anybody racked, and we expect people in the public eye to be supermen without emotions who show no weakness, and it's like they're all more Britney Spears 2008 than we realize. And a lot of this stuff is like, just go watch Craig Ferguson's monologue on Britney Spears in 2008. And it's like, that's how we ought to approach public celebrities and just give them some grace and space to be people. And like, people have money, and sometimes that money and that fame that alienates them. Even if they chose it, they worked for it, they attained it. They're still human beings deserving of grace, empathy, compassion, and that's, you can't.
I don't think there's a lot of that out there, which is ironic in conservative circles, because it's like, I hate everybody that's this and that, and but you have some virtue because you're poor. People are people,
right?
Yeah,
it's. You've got to put you've got to exercise the values. Like, if you want celebrities to be less wacky and isolated and making vagina candles because the only other people that they're around believe that vagina candles can heal the world, like, they probably would hang out with regular people if regular people didn't treat them like circus freaks.
He's talking about Gwyneth Paltrow. People, she had a candle that she made with her vagina. Like, I gotta tell you though, like, seriously, how bad does it have to be that you do that in your life and you think that has value?
I smelt it.
Did you, for real? Did you get one?
We did at work.
One?
Work bought one. It smells like your grandmother's.
You did that on the perfume. Show? Did everybody go around and smell it and give their thoughts?
Yeah. It was.
What were the thoughts?
It smells like your grandmother's potpourri fresh out the bag in 1952.
I don't think that smells like her vagina then. She's
very
lying.
Floral. Yeah.
She's lying. Her vagina does not smell like flowers. Everything we've talked about, this is the most important.
All right, next up. I'll get one more point on that. I think that people love talking about this shit because we'll make fun of Meghan Markle being suicidal and lonely because it gives us something to talk about with people, so we don't feel suicidal and lonely. Like, we have we don't get out of our houses. Some of us are legally bound to our houses right now if we live in states other than Indiana. Like, it's even before the pandemic. I think so. I run social media for 4 different brands. Big media brands. I cannot tell you how lonely people are. And we had this experience on the Pat Down where Dion was kind of experiencing it for the first time, working with a large audience on social media. And he couldn't put his finger on it, but he was troubled by something. And I go, it's loneliness. And they're looking for you to fill that loneliness in the DMs. And you don't feel like you feel bad because you can't do that for them because there's 15,000 of them. And that's the truth. Like, there's, our inboxes at my day job or my inboxes at other media brands, podcasts I'm on. Like, I do my best. I do my absolute best to try and get back to everybody, or at least show some reaction that I acknowledge you. I saw this, but there comes a time where I've got to put my phone down and spend time with my family. And people are just really, really, really lonely. And the best way for them to connect is through a podcast or through a TV show or through gossiping about a celebrity. And, I don't know what the answer is to get out of our comfort zones and get back in real life with people, but that's just hard.
Can you imagine if this pandemic happened, say, 15 years ago, what it would have looked like?
I think people would have been much more. I think it would have been worse because I think people would have been more in person. I don't think. Yeah. I think that online and the amount of entertainment options we have gives us this false sense of community. And it got us through the past year. But I can tell you that, I don't know if you feel it, but the sense that the numbers are rapidly plummeting, the vaccine is here, everybody's sitting on all this cash. Like, there's about to be an enormous explosion. I mean, I went to Florida last weekend or 2 weekends ago. It was busier in February than it was ever on July 4th weekend. And
well, I read that a lot of 65 and older that have gotten the vaccine took it was like their spring break finally, because they've been in their freaking houses for a year. Yeah. So it's just exploding.
One of our co-hosts, Rob Cortell, 60 something, nearly 70. He got his vaccines. He's having a big party at his house on Sunday night, and he hasn't seen anybody for a year. You know, it's so. And the messaging from Fauci and these other people, he's trying to play it safe, but saying, you know, well, you got to be careful.
Fauci's pissing me off. Fauci's pissing me off because I think he's just trying to keep he's not ready to start the new project at work, so he's just clinging on to the old one.
I think this is I don't know that I think this is his last project. You know, he's the highest.
Needs to just stop.
He's the highest paid. He's literally the highest paid employee in the government, but when you watch him,
is he really?
Yeah, he is. He's the highest. He makes $4 million a year because he's so highly specialized.
Are you serious? Because the president makes $280 or something.
Yeah, no.
That's crazy.
Okay, so here's
what
the thing. When you watch him,
got a major stimulus.
he'll watch something. He'll say something. He'll be asked something, and then he'll be like, "Well, you know how doctors are. Doctors and lawyers are the same. They waffle. Well, it could be this, it could be that." And then the headlines will print, Dr. Fauci says wear 2 masks. You know, should we wear 2? I literally watched this thing, right? So Pete Buttigieg wears 2 masks to the inauguration. Somebody goes, should we do that, Dr. Fauci? Dr. Fauci says, it couldn't hurt. And next thing you know, Dr. Fauci is telling us we all must wear 2 masks. What about 69 masks? Ha ha ha, I really made a joke there. And so instead of just coming out in Israel and saying your life is going back to normal as soon as everybody gets this vaccine, we've got, I don't know, life may not return to normal. And so that was so if you think the CDC is giving you scientific guidelines, they're not. They're giving you scientific guidelines within public opinion. It's changing because people are ready to get back to their real life.
Here's my opinion too, though, on the vaccine, and I'm not angry with people that aren't reactionary anti-vaxxers, but that are I'm a little concerned it's gone through quickly, because most of the herd immunity has come from people that have already gotten the coronavirus naturally.
Yeah.
That's more people that have been vaccinated. And honestly, I think if we would have just let things go last year, we would have reached that much quicker, and a lot less people would have died. But that's scary to people that want to control situations. And
yeah, I would definitely count myself in that camp, but I have to say I have 50 people in my life that have gotten the vaccine, and none of them except my mom, who just had a bad flu for a couple days, have had any kind of reaction whatsoever. I know that at my husband's work, some people had some major, I can't remember which one they got, major symptoms of neurological symptoms. And then we have the antibodies too. So when you have the antibodies and get the vaccine, you just get more sick. Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Our pediatrician actually told us that when we were taking the baby in. And so, weighing that against the fact that we're very young and healthy, you know what I mean? What risk to me is risk reward. But I could see, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Oh my God, I'm losing my anarchism card.
Well, see, that's interesting, because my mom was in the ICU working with COVID.
She probably had the antibodies. So you get sick when you have them and get the vaccine. It's just common knowledge. It's
what about your autism? Are you worried that might increase?
I am. I'm worried that suddenly I'm going to be like all the men that DM me. I'll just become them.
Well, do you want to do a couple more and then wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's see if we get any weird ones.
Hey, you're talking about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, which seems to be a hot topic on the podcast nowadays. As you can see from my name, I am biracial. I have one black parent and one white parent, much like Meghan Markle. And what I can tell you is that anyone who is biracial, when growing up, is made well aware of the friction, dichotomy, and racism that exists between the worlds of black and white. This is what we have to grow up, and this is part of our reality and part of our narrative being biracial, is being exposed to racism. So I don't know what Meghan Markle was expecting when she hooked up with Harry, especially given his stature in society. Did she think that the racism that seeped its way into her parents' relationship wasn't going to find her out as well? I mean, does she not think she's black, maybe? I don't know. But she's pretty naive if she thinks that she was going to get away from that.
That's actually a really, really interesting point.
You know, I would say perhaps she was naive, but she just probably assumed she would be treated like a human being, like most people should be treated. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I would say, like, I guess, and that sort of, maybe this is a good place to end, because this is a good ending point. Like, I guess you and I have not gone looking for trouble. We've just been shocked that we found it. And it's outrageous to see. You're indignant when you see people being treated as less than human. And then you're more indignant when you point that out and somebody says you shouldn't worry about that. Like, what?
Yeah, but then, and we also go back to our regular lives too, so it's really difficult because then we go back to really not experiencing much injustice. You know, so, you know, basically just being a female, maybe when I was a single mom and stuff is the only time I really, but so I don't know. I sometimes I don't feel justified in speaking up, but then at the same time, like I should speak up anyway. So I don't know. That's difficult. And I do know like a lot of biracial people really struggle because like a lot of times their family will be like, well, you know what you're getting into, you know, you're going to have trouble. It's like, you know, that's kind of a shit message to give them.
Yeah.
So
I don't, you and I are very much like, the world shouldn't be this way and we need to change it. Where there are some people like my friend Dion who are like, this is how the world is and you need to get used to it.
Yeah, I don't ever want to live there though, because that makes me so sad. And I think people do have the capacity to change. I've seen it. I've done it. So if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Tricia.
Hope and change, Chris.
That's right.
I'm like your Ginger Obama.
Oh,
God,
Tricia.
I just destroyed our entire show.
The whole network. Brian and Remzo are leaving now.
They are.
Even Hody has turned his back on you.
I might change the name of Gingerarchy to Ginger Obama.
Ginger Obama. But we have to have like a little apostrophe.
Yeah,
like,
yes.
Ginger Obama.
Oh, whoa. All right.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Tricia.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.